This is the most important shot in the Dune films. The look in Timothy's eyes, the context of the scene, the direction of Denis Villeneuve, and the soul of Frank Herbert's Dune all come together to make this moment. When I started writing this video, it began as something completely different. When you watch Dune Part 1 and 2, you'll notice what I like to call echo shots all throughout the films. Shots that are mirrors of each other with slight variations sewn in. Paul has a vision, then later on that scene happens, but something is slightly different. These echoes are littered all throughout the films, some a little bit more obvious than others. In Part 1, Paul sees himself on a battlefield twirling over enemies, slashing them with a crysknife and breathing heavily. Then in Part 2, we see that his vision was actually of Chani, twirling over enemies, slashing them with a crysknife and breathing heavily. His prescience is refracted through this foggy prism until he drinks the water of life, of course. Originally, this entire video was just going to be me finding every instance of these echo shots, putting them side by side, and having it up on YouTube for people to see. But when I ran this idea by my brother Jeff, he asked a question that opened the door to a much more interesting idea, I think. Instead, he asked me, what was Denis trying to communicate with these echo shots? That's when I came to the conclusion that is the thesis of this video. When adapting this story, Denis Villeneuve did the most important thing he could, which was communicating the soul of Frank Herbert's Dune. When I attended the Dune Part 2 premiere with Jeff, we got extremely lucky and we caught Denis on his way out of the theater after the screening. Jeff is the person that made me fall in love with Denis movies, fall deeper in love with movies and watched them from like a more interesting place. And I had spent years listening to Jeff talk about his admiration for Denis and sort of how unique he was and the introspective and important drive he had in Hollywood and that how like unique it was, and he really woke me up to that. So I had spent years listening to Jeff talk about Denis. So in this moment, I pulled my phone out to capture the moment. I'm watching Jeff meet his hero. Denis was also my hero at that point, and I pull my phone out, and in the 5-second window that he had to meet his hero, he used that time to say,
Thank you.
Your sensibility speaks to me.
Thank you.
"Your sensibilities speak to me." This was such a beautiful moment for Jeff and I. Years of work, creating, connecting with people, everything felt like it had sort of brought us to this premiere. And in this 5-second window he had to communicate with his hero, he said something that stirred something inside of me. And I've been thinking about it a lot ever since. And sort of that sentence ended up also leading me to write this video. I was curious, what sensibilities was he referring to? In a lot of ways, this video is sort of the culmination of all of my previous expressions of my love of these movies, and it came to a head. These two paths crossed at the perfect time of these echo shots, this moment with Denis and Jeff, and going to the premiere, and the years of work. I feel like everything sort of has led to this video.
I can't believe it.
You did it.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
What did you say? What did you say? What did he say?
I said, like, Denis, that was beautiful. Your sensibilities speak to me very closely.
Now, before I get too far into this video, I do think it's important to acknowledge that this is a subjective opinion of these movies and my own interpretation of the books. Everybody has different interpretations and different little nuanced opinions. I think for some people, the most important aspect of adaptations are, hitting every plot point or most plot points, sticking closely to the book, casting actors that look a lot like the characters. I think some people, it's a lot more important to them that the words in the book are just visualized. And I think that's, obviously an important part of the adaptation process. But the special piece of it is what Denis did with it, which is communicating the soul of the book and the feeling that he gets, and that I think I also got when I read these books. He injected into these movies somehow, which I want to talk about.
This intuition that he could eventually fulfill a part of his identity. I don't know how to say that in English, but that finally gets closer to the true self through this other culture. I thought was a beautiful idea, but it's a novel that has a lot of layers, and it's a kind of novel that has. The more you read it at different ages, you always find something new. It's a really a rich and dense book.
When people talk about Dune being this unadaptable story, this unadaptable book, I think most of the conversations are around just like the sheer depth of the world building, the number of characters and arcs, and just the vastness of this story. But also an important part of that is also the internal dialogue that happens in the books. A lot of our characters, we get peeks into their minds and we know what they're thinking, and Frank Herbert's able to do that sort of creatively through words. But obviously Denis can't do that, so I think he tried to find a way to do that, and the way is so interesting, and I really want to get into it. To me, this task of communicating the internal dialogue and these nuanced, intricate internal feelings is, I guess I refer to it as the soul of Dune. To me, the soul of Dune is found between the conscious and subconscious mind. This story, on a larger scale, is about humanity trying to bridge the gap between our conscious thoughts and the thoughts that come from the place that we dare not look, or we cannot look, our subconscious. Throughout the hundreds of thousands of years that humans have existed, we've created millions of religions and ideologies and philosophies that try to offer an explanation for the unexplainable. Where do dreams come from? How far can we push the human mind? And what is our collective purpose? So going back to the first scene that I showed in this video, which I think is arguably the most important moment in these movies, I wanted to play it again with a little bit more context. I want to watch it with you guys. So Chani and Paul are having a quiet moment atop a sand dune, appreciating the planet around them, which is just so Frank Herbert. I love that. Chani points to a dune in the distance, and when Paul looks, this is what he sees.
Arrakis is so beautiful when the sun is low.
This frame is the first frame we ever saw from a Denis Villeneuve Dune film. Dune Part 1 opens with a voice telling us dreams are messages from the deep, and then the first shot is this specific dune. Cutting back to the present moment, Paul returns his attention to Chani with a very complex look in his eyes. He has seen that dune before, and so have we. The audience experiences this feeling of deja vu at the same time that Paul experiences this fulfillment of a vision, this fulfillment of a dream. So both the audience and Paul in this moment feel like extremely connected to the visuals and to that feeling, to this simple shot of spice rolling over a dune on Arrakis. This look in Paul's eyes, I think, boils down to familiarity, which is the great success of using these echo shots, and the acting of Timothée Chalamet is creating a sense of familiarity, both with the characters to the story, but also with us, with these films. We see these shots over and over, we see these connected pieces, and throughout the process of watching these movies, it feels like we are connecting our conscious mind to our subconscious mind, which I think is the ultimate success of Denis Villeneuve, is creating experiences in theaters that last lifetimes, and you watch them over the span of years, yet this sense of familiarity remains, which is what Frank Herbert did, and why his book is still so impactful, because it feels so human, it feels so deeply instinctual, and I think that is what Denis did. The power within his own mind, his foresight, his intuition, visions, whatever you want to call it, becomes real in that moment. The real power of the Kwisatz Haderach is the full control of his own mind. The ultimate power that the Bene Gesserit speak of in Dune is a person who has the ability to go inward, scour his own memories, scour his ancestors' memories, scour humanity's memories, and lead everyone to a safe paradise. And this, I think, sort of speaks to all of Dune, all of the books, all of the movies. I think the larger message is that the power of going inward, finding peace, and understanding ourselves so deeply that we cannot be controlled by religion, government, or even a planet. I think the power of Dune's message is the power of humanity, and the power that we hold within ourselves when we don't allow our subconscious or our minds to be in any way controlled or manipulated by a group, a religion, a government, anything. Denis even spoke of this feeling or this idea that we need to release these inner voices and become free by overpowering the inner voices in our heads in this interview.
What do you think it was about you back then that it appealed to you?
Later on, I will say that it's the idea that in order to get free, you have to deal with the inner voices that are the ghosts coming from the past. I'm talking about the genetic heritage or the education that you received and the way that this trap your subconscious and put limits in your freedom in everyday life are affected by those inner voices. I'm not talking about schizophrenia. It's an image, but the inner forces that how can you get rid of those forces and become free?
I also wanted to take a moment to talk about the Fremen and sort of the way that their religion or their group is used as a commentary on this idea of the power within ourselves. I think the Fremen are a wonderful example of this idea. They have been able to not only survive on the harshest planet in the universe, but have collected the power to change the face of a planet. As a collective, they have saved millions of decaliters of water, became the fiercest warriors in the universe, and have tamed the most dangerous animal. But the Fremen's ultimate failure came by design. For thousands of years, they were manipulated to believe that they needed external support to fully realize their paradise. They were told that an outsider would save them and that they needed to wait for that person to come and deliver them from their suffering. But they held the power within themselves to do that the entire time. And I think that's the tragedy of the Fremen and the tragedy of Dune. The failure in life as humans and as people is to not recognize that we control our own destiny, that the answers are within ourselves, and it's up to us to realize that. These echoes are everywhere once you start looking for them, and you'll find more the more that you rewatch them with intention. And I also think that it can change the way that you see some scenes, which is really interesting from a movie watching perspective. In part 1, Paul has a vision where Chani brings him close, pulls him in sharply while stabbing him in the stomach and then throwing him back. He then holds his side and he's bleeding from his side. And then at the end of part 2, this moment comes to life, except it's with Fade. He brings him close, stabs him in an identical way, and throws him back. And then something really interesting happens in the next moment when looking at it with this new context of this specifically being an echo shot or something that Paul had seen before and that we had seen before. Paul glances over at Chani in a very similar way that he did while atop the dune earlier in part 2. And to Timothy's credit, doing these silent or internal performances of complex thoughts, of prescience and visions and self-introspection and conveying that with only your eyes and your face, I think is so incredible. Another example is found near the beginnings of both films, with Paul sleeping and having visions. In part 1, he has his first subtle vision of him and a girl on Arrakis. He sees the sides of their heads, the ears. It's just sort of this, foggy vision dream that he's having. In part 2, he is sleeping on the sand while dreaming of a conversation with Aaliyah. Both movies use the beginnings to introduce this idea of sleep and dreams to connect to your inner self and to communicate with something more. Dreams are, after all, messages from the deep. The echo shots also appear in scenes without visions as well. So far, I've only really touched on these instances where Paul has a vision and then it becomes true. But I think there's something more happening, and the filmmakers are getting in on the action of communicating this subconscious idea or these subconscious ideas across 5.5 hours of movies. Take this moment from part 1 where Duke Leto sternly walks towards a representative of the Emperor, takes a moment to collect himself, then delivers a strong message. This is mirrored by Paul's moment at the end of part 2, where he sternly approaches the Emperor before delivering a strong message. We get to see this father-son connection. They both walk forward in extremely similar ways and have this similar bravado, this similar strength within them, this Atreides strength. And I just love that the filmmakers are getting on the action too and communicating these subtle things without everybody praises Denis for his subtlety, and I think it goes a lot farther than most people even realize. Another aspect of what made Denis' adaptation so successful, I think, began before the cameras even started rolling. There are countless examples of interviews where actors or crew talk about how Denis was so careful and so thoughtful in every decision that he made. In an interview with Josh Horowitz, Austin Butler shared a story of meeting Denis for coffee before he was signed on for the film. And I think it's a really interesting little insight into how Denis works and how he hires people and how careful he is with the decisions that he makes.
First, can you just tell me like how it happened? Like, did you have to audition?
Miraculously, no. Denis was in town. I was in LA at the time, and Denis asked to meet for coffee, and we really hit it off. And we just talked a lot about how we like to work, and talked about the part and how I would approach it and that sort of thing. And then he said, I'm going to dream on this. And then he called me a week later and he said, I would love for you to join me on Arrakis.
I love that for a character as important as Fade, even though he ended up only having like 16 minutes of screen time, he was a very important character. And Denis knew this and he understood it, and he literally dreamt on it. He thought extremely deeply, and he dreamt on this idea of Austin Butler being Fade, what that would look like. And he took the time and the consideration and the care to wait a week to come back to him and to meet him in person and say, you are Fade. I would love for you to join me on Arrakis. This intentional and introspective approach that Denis brought is baked into these films. And I think from that perspective, I think that's what makes these the perfect adaptation of Dune. And from like a personal perspective, this resonated with me so much because I was raised extremely religious, and went on a sort of self-discovery path that has led me to where I am now, which is, I think, just the power of humanity and the power of myself. And I found such a peace in knowing myself, and I think that's why the story of Dune resonates so deeply with me. I really appreciate you guys watching. I don't post extremely often, but every time I do, it does come from a very sincere place. And I have a strong desire to actually connect with people, whether that's on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or in real life. I'm always having sort of these deeper introspective conversations, and I would love for YouTube and Instagram and TikTok to be a place of genuine connection. So any kind of community that I have online is extremely special to me, and I read all of your comments, all of your messages, and I just really appreciate you guys sticking around and watching this. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe and like the video and send it to your friends if you think they would think it's interesting. Any way I can make an impact on people or share my love for these movies will always be important to me, and I appreciate you guys.